Hi, everyone. I've always wanted to go to Colombia, and Linda and I spent 5 weeks in Colombia in November, December of 2023. We used a private tour, Native Birding. It's a local company. I prefer, or Linda and I prefer, local companies rather than the big foreign companies. You get really good value. They tend to support conservation and the economy, and it's just, well, they use local guides. Colombia is an amazing country. It's the richest country for birds in the world. About 20% or 1,900 species occur there. There's a huge amount of habitats from Amazonia to desert in the north and the Andes. Here's a picture of Colombia. Okay, this picture, the person on the right actually is our driver. And what happened was, you can see that the police, it was a road check, and the police were checking our vehicle, and our guide thought it would be very funny to dress the driver like this in front of the police. I almost died laughing. I almost fell out of the vehicle. I was laughing so hard because the police had no idea that he had dressed like this. But I just wanted to say that Colombia does have a very bad reputation around the world, but it's changed a lot in a couple of last couple of decades. And with the exception of the Choco and some of the border areas, it's a very safe country. It's to be. It has an excellent park and reserve system, and the accommodations there boast a lot of hummingbird feeders, fruit and grain feeders, and ant pit stations. It's an amazing country to bird in. Using the pictures I took on the trip, we're gonna just look at some of the birds and the birding places in the Andes. From the south in Colombia, the Andes divide into three mountain ranges. You have your Western Andes, split by the Coca River, your Central Andes, that's separated by the Magdalena River from the Eastern ranges. So you've got from the south, it breaks up into three ranges. The tour started in Medellin, and Medellin is just above where you can see Ardenne. And the first stop was the Chestnut-capped Pia Reserve, which is in the Central Highlands. It's a really important reserve protecting a species that wasn't found too long ago, the Chestnut-capped Pia. It's Pro Avis Reserve. Pro Avis is a non-government organization that protects bird habitats in Colombia, and they offer basic accommodation right at the birding spots, and with it serve 3 meals a day. And it protects the Chestnut-capped Pia Reserve protects about 1,000 hectares of pre-montane forest, and it's like about 1,200 to 1,800 meters elevation. The reserve has trails that access the forest. So from the accommodation, you just cross the road, and there's all kinds of trails that take you into the forest. And it also has a very small canopy tower. This is one of the birds that you can get in the forest. It's a collared trogon female. Here's a white-crowned manakin. Manakins are small forest birds that males gather in dancing grounds called leks and perform for females. They're really spectacular displays. Feeders, and most of the Pro Avis reserves where they have a combination do have feeders, but the feeders on site attract a lot of birds. This is a Colombian chachalaca, like a gallinaceous bird. This beautiful bird, golden tanager, several species of tanagers you can view at the feeding stations. Speckled tanager. A lot of these birds, like these tanagers, go on fast-moving flocks, so it's really nice to see them so close, just feeding in front of you. ubiquitous but and very common widespread bird is a palm tanager from southern Mexico right to northern Argentina. And a female red-headed barbet. Barbets are frugivores, they're fruit eaters that nest in cavities that they excavate themselves with their big bills. The feeders also attract a lot of wintering North American species. Lynn and I were really surprised to see this gray cheek thrush. It's one of the best looks of a gray cheek thrush I've ever had going to the feeder. And almost all the lodges have hummingbird feeders. And here there's four species. The hermit is the hummingbird on the right with the long curved bill, long tipped tail. We have a large empress brilliant facing the hermit, um, Andean emerald, and a hill star. Very common, but a very beautiful hummingbird is a crowned wood nymph. Um, from the Chestnut Cap Reserve, we crossed over to the western Andes via the Cauca Valley, and we stopped in some dry habitat and picked up a couple of birds, such as this gray picolet. Picolets are small, like woodpecker-like things that are very small that feed on bamboo and smaller branches. In the Cauca Valley, we got the endemic Antioquia wren, which was only was discovered in 2012, so a very recent discovery. From the Cauca Valley, here's a green iguana. I don't know if anyone has ever owned an iguana. Um, I know a couple of people that have had them, and I can say that you don't want to get bitten by one of these things. They have razor sharp teeth, and it's basically put your hand in a meat grinder. So from the Cauca Valley, we went to the Las Tangaras Reserve, which is in the blue there, and it's part of the Western Andes, and it's situated in the highlands of the Choco region. The Choco region, which is the west slope of the western Colombia, is one of the richest places for endemics in all of South America. It extends down to northern Ecuador, but it's also one of the more dangerous areas. So most of the lodges are above 1,000 meters. As you get down towards sea level, it becomes a little bit more dangerous. And here's a view of the forest from Las Tangaras Lodge. It has a lot of range restricted species. And as you can see, much of the very wet, and it's a very wet slope of the Andes is covered in forest. At Las Tangaras Lodge, they have trails that take you up to the high elevation areas. And here's one of the trails. Some of them are fairly rough uh, and quite arduous. Here we're crossing a stream. But it'll take you up to good montane habitat. This is a bird called an Olivaceous pia, and it's a type of Caatinga. Caatingas are a real diverse group of birds that are very brightly colored and include everything from cock of the rock to these pias and mourners. The specialty, or one of the specialties that are sought after in the mountains, is this gold ring tanager. The lodge at Las Tangaras has a lot of hummingbird feeders, packed full of hummers. Um, Here we got mostly Andean emeralds, a few steely vented, the ones that are dark underneath, and the banana quit. The brown violet ear. Violet ears are named by their violet ear patch. Beautiful bird. The lodge also has four by four Jeeps, and they can take you to access the higher mountain trails. There's on the left is our guide Carlos. One of the specialties of the area is this toucan barbet, which is a choco endemic. And it has for a barbet, quite a stout bill. Barbets feed mostly on fruit. And this is a small, brightly colored flycatcher of mid elevations, ornate flycatcher. Los Tangueras has another set of hummingbird feeders at about 1,700, 1,750 meters and attract a different set of hummingbird species. This one is known as the booted racket tail. This is a violet-tailed sylph. Sylphs are, when I looked it up, are imaginary spirits of the air, a fairy, and sure enough, quite a nice bird. Purple-bibbed white tip. And the white tip is referring to white tips to the tail that you can't see that well. And this is perhaps my favorite hummer. We saw maybe 70 species on that trip, and these guys, these cornets, they're huge. They have a beautiful glowing belly. They're spectacular, really nice birds. That was one of the birds that Lynn and I really wanted to see. And here's a white tip, but it's showing the flexibility of hummingbird bills. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of birds have very flexible bills, and here it's opening its bill. In addition to the hummingbird feeders, they also have fruit and seed feeders, and attract a lot of common species. These are flame rump tanagers. Very common bird from southern Mexico all the way to northern Argentina. But I think very, very pretty. It's probably the most commonly seen tanager, and it's the blue-gray tanager. And a lot of people will be familiar with this bird. Very similar to our northern mockingbird is the tropical mockingbird. Coming to the feeder, I was surprised to see a Andean motmot. Motmots are unique in birds in that they trim their long tails to form rackets, and they frequently switch their tail back and forth. There's a yellow-backed oriole. Orioles are native to the New World. Almost all of them are dressed in black, yellow, or orange. And perhaps one of the commonest birds you'll see in the highlands of Colombia is this North American species. It's a non-breeding Blackburnian warbler. Um, when you go birding in the highlands, this is the bird that you'll see the most of, Blackburnian, when you're searching for other birds. And here's another one of our birds, black and white warbler that was attending the feeder. From Reserva Las Tangaras, I don't know if everyone can find that in the map. Um, we drove down to the beautiful city of Ardeen in the western Andes. And Ardeen is a very picturesque tourist town in the western Andes. but it gives access to really good birding areas. It's very close to a yellow-eared parrot reserve, and it's very popular with Colombian tourists. Here they are enjoying lunch at the plaza. This thrush, a great thrush, replaces the robin. It's a very common bird in the highlands, right through most of South America. And very special, the town of Ardene, it has this amazing bird. It has a cock of the rock lek. Cock of the rocks are Katinga, absolutely brilliant, and almost right in town by a bridge is a steep walled canyon, and they have displaying male cock of the rocks. Let's see if I get this going. There's another. Those are the cock of the rocks. The males gather just like a mannequins in these dancing areas, and anytime a female comes by, they'll dance and call like that. The females make nests on the walls of steep canyons and that. From Ardene, very close by, there's a place called Mirador del Robla, and it's an excellent stop with a restaurant and feeding stations. And as you can see, a lot of the birds are incredibly tame. This is a brush finch. There's lots of different brush finches in South America. In addition to the birds that they feed, the owners were feeding a neotropical cat called a margay, which was coming to them every morning, and she would feed them fish. We didn't get there in time, early enough to see it. A lot of people will know this bird. Acorn woodpeckers are found right from Washington State, right through the Andes, anywhere there's oaks, and there's lots of oaks in the neotropics. Flower piercers are highland birds that have a hooked bill, and they use that to pierce the corollas of flowers to access nectar. This is a masked flower piercer. And Mirador del Robla is very close to an ant pit, a feeding station. Ant pittas are terrestrial ground birds that are notoriously difficult to see. I've been many a time within 5 feet of an ant pitta with other people and cannot see it. And that's happened to me many times. They just seem to always stay behind a bush or a log. But these ant pitta feeders allows people to see them really close. This is a chamois ant pitta, one of the rufous types that were split. The viewpoint has hummingbird feeders. There's many places that have hummingbird feeders in Colombia. This is a common, large, beautiful hummer. It's found throughout the Andes. It's a sparkling violet ear, and you can see a bit of the throat, but the ear coverts also have a violet cover. Another hummer, collared Inca. So from Ardene, we went across to the central Andes and to Rio Blanco. And Rio Blanco is one of the premier birding spots in all of Colombia. It's in the central Andes, and it's a mecca for skulking species. It's one of the finest birding spots in South America, in fact. It has 4 ant pitta feeding stations, each with a separate feeding time, and they each attract different species. So at 7:30 might be the feeding time for this bicolored ant pitta. 9:30 might be for the next one, so on and so forth. And here is at Rio Blanco. Here they are trying to, well, here's the bicolored ant pitta.
Eso. Vuelta, vuelta, vuelta. Bye.
There's a test at crown ant pitta. In the last slide, you probably heard that fellow calling to them. For many of the ant pittas, they know their particular feeder's voice, and the ant pittas are actually given names. So this might be Charlie, and he'll call Charlie, 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 come from the worms, and down it'll come. Here's another one of the species that's endemic to Colombia, northern Peru, is a brown banded ant pitta. Actually, I think it might be a Colombian endemic. And I was in shock when this fruit eater came down to be fed. Fruit eaters are really sluggish birds that eat fruit up on the canopy of the tree, and it can be kind of hard to see. This one came right down, very tame, and took worms. Another specialty of the mountains is a black-billed mountain toucan. The staff at many places like Rio Blanco go find birds for the visitors. And here we're at the Enchanted Forest, and on the sign, at the top of the sign, you'll see is Owl's Watch. We're smiling because in the very next picture, the staff located this bird. It's a Stygian owl, and it's a very dark owl that occurs from southern Mexico to again all the way to Argentina. And it's very similar to our long-eared owl. They seem to all have feeding stations. Rio Blanco also has feeding stations. Here's a chestnut cap brushfinch. And one of, I think there's 6 species of quetzal in the world, or maybe 5. Here's a female golden-headed quetzal. I view Central Andes, about 57% there's about 57% of forest cover in Colombia, and 87% of that is primary forest. They do a really good job of conserving forest. Very close to Rio Blanco, or on the way, is a place called Hacienda El Bosque. And it is an agricultural and tourist farm that's dedicated to conserving its natural resources. It conserves a montane forest between 2,800 and 3,800 meters. It has lecture accommodation. Here's a cafe. It's got 2 ant pitta feeders, a couple of hummingbird feeding stations, and then it's got an excellent large seed and fruit seed eater, fruit feeders. Here's one of the pittas that are attracted to the feeding station. This is equatorial ant pitta. Here's its mate with a worm. One of many different brush finch species. These are birds that are like our sparrows, but they're usually thickened shrubs. One of my favorite birds, crescent-faced ant pitta. Ant pittas are, like I said, incredibly difficult to see. This is a real pretty one, and it came right out. It was just an amazing bird. They're monogamous. They form pairs, raise 1 or 2 young. Both are involved in raising the young. And it keeps on getting crazy in Colombia. Here's a picture of yellow-bellied chat tyrants being fed.
Venga para acá. Grande, ya. ¿No lo ves? ¿Ves? Aquí, juntos. Ya, tranquilo. Ahí.
This green and black fruit eater came right down as well. I was amazed to see the amount of birds that were that tame and came because of the fruit and seed. A lot of fruit in the forest is local, and it's fruiting trees that they don't fruit all year round, so birds have to move. And I guess these birds, they have a constant supply. Very beautiful, very large tanager, the hooded mountain tanager. Here they put out grapes for the bird. It's a different genus, but similar to our Wilson's warbler, is a black-crested warbler. Lady brush finch. Here's one of the, just to give an example of what it's like at one of these hummingbird feeders. Some of it's pretty crazy. You can get a lot of different species. This one had about 4 or 5 shining sunbeams in that, but
Centricón. Acá pues, Centricón. Ya, Maito, a ver si se motiva. Está ahí perchada. Apenas le dio, se movió un poquito y ya. Después si uno va y se le mete allá y ahí sí, sí se va.
the masked flower piercer. Tourmaline sun angel protecting its feeder. Oh, a mountain velvet breast, long curved bill. There's a better shot of a very nice Tourmaline sun angel. Also, the feeder were another one of my favorite hummers. This is a sword-billed hummingbird, extremely long bill, adapted from getting nectar from long tube flowers that other hummingbirds can't reach. You'll almost invariably see sword-billed hummingbirds with their bills held up. I don't know because of the weight, but shining sunbeam. It's a common hummer. It's what we were seeing in one of those videos. But in my view, one of the best. I really like them, and you can't often see it, but on the back they have a purple gloss when the sun hits it. Mountain toucan. As you can see, it makes photography. If you're interested in photography, Colombia is the place to go. I don't have the best camera gear. If you did, you could get amazing shots. The birds. There's an ending guan. Guans and chachalakas are gallinaceous type birds. They're pretty well the same. The chachalakas tend to be more terrestrial, guans more arboreal. There's the Andean guan and sickle wing guan. You can tell the sickle wing just because of its chestnut belly here. Quail doves are very shy terrestrial doves, very shy, and it was a real treat to see this white-throated quail dove coming up to the feeder. Next, we went to a very close to Bosque, was Los Nevados Park, and it protects the highest and most northern volcanoes in Colombia. It's a huge park. It's 58,000 or 58,300 hectares. It protects a lot of paramo habitat. Um, the plants that you see in the background here are called big monks in the Espeletia genus and part of the aster family. Synclodes are a high elevation fernarid. Fernarid is a huge, huge group of birds that in South America, mostly dressed in browns and rufous. And this is the montane version of a sedge wren or a marsh wren. It's called a grass wren. Similar habits, similar looking. The Paramo has this hammer. It's really sought after because it's a crested hummingbird, bearded helmet crest. Yellow-nape brush finch. Very close to, or actually within the park, is Hotel Termalis, and it's a very comfortable place to stay. It's surrounded in forest, and again, they have feeders there. Here's a view of some of the forest that surrounds the hotel. The hotel has hot springs that people go to. And because of its high elevation, it attracts a lot of montane birds like this lacrimose mountain tanager. This might be my favorite mountain tanager, scarlet-bellied mountain tanager. Mountain tanagers are fairly big birds. They're about 6 or 7 inches, so they're easily visible. And a picture of the scarlet-bellied. Peonate brush finch. Very proud. One of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life when it comes to birding is to do this. I can't explain it, but there seems to be a big difference between watching a feeder a few feet away and actually feeding them. And at Hotel Terminalis, they give you these little mini feeders so you can go and
Do that. You
feed
do
the hummers.
close up. It goes very close up.
Pretty. Yeah, crazy experience. I've never done anything like that before. We found 3 or 4 different types. It was really neat. So the next spot, it's fairly close to a town called Pira, was Otin Kimbaya. It's an easy to get to place, very close to the town of Pereira, and it holds a lot of special birds. One of those special birds is the endemic Kakaguan. Not the best shot, but Inca jay or green jay. And when we were exiting, we found a couple of red howler monkeys. Um, I don't know if everyone's ever heard howler monkeys, but it's definitely worth it to experience the sounds of them. It's quite a roar. So from Pura, which is just by the Paramount del Ruiz, we went to the Eastern Andes. Um, this is where Bogota is in the Eastern Andes, the capital of Colombia. It's a modern city. It had really good food. I can't say that for a lot of the lodges. The lodges were excellent, but the food was well, just somewhat basic. Whereas in Bogota, we had amazing food. One of the places we went to close by was Parque Chicac um, for hummers, and here's another hummer called puff leg. And you can see the white fluff around its feet, and puff legs all have that characteristic white fluffy boots. Another one of the many hammers. This is a sun angel, and sun angels you can identify by their shortish beaks, and they have usually a violet throat. This is Longmare's sun angel. here's the group and the caretaker of the people that in Park Chicak that were taking care of the feeders. We're dressed like that. It's very wet in the Andes for much of the year. And a short distance away was another garden for hummers and stuff, and called Ardeen Incantado, I think. We went for this bird, an indigo-capped hummingbird. And characteristic of all mangoes, or at least females, is a real distinctive black stripe right down the breast. Here's a black-throated mango. The males are all dark below. Widespread tropical brood parasite is a shiny cowbird. A very common saffron finch going to the feeders. And finally, a really ground dove. Ground doves are small thrush-billed doves from southern states all the way down to Argentina. And that's it. Anyone have any questions?
How many species did you see on the trip?
Um, 700 or something.
Like,
Wow.
But that was okay. But that wasn't just that was in the Andes. That includes Santa Marta. And Linda and I spent a week in Me Too, which is Amazonia.
You said the
There's a
what?
lot of birds. I mean, you could probably get in 5 weeks, you could, get 1,000 species.
And how many of these were lifers for you?
Lifers? Boy, I don't know. Um, I'm maybe close to 100. I'd already been to Peru 6 times, in Argentina, and I did Panama a couple times. So most of the birds that were new were the endemics in Santa Marta, the white sand forest. I wanted to get a bunch of birds, and Me Too, and then Owaka birds in the Andes.
That's true. You have to qualify because you've already seen so much.
But I'll have to say I was pleasantly surprised with. I mean, no, no, that's not even the right word. I was in shock, actually. It was the most sort of advanced, modern South American country that I've seen. The infrastructure was really good. Roads were good. Everywhere you could see they had hummingbird feeders. They're right on the bandwagon when it comes to ant pittas. Um, Many of the locals want to preserve birds, so went to a couple of, like I say, that farm that protects birds and has feeders. It's an amazing place.
I think you are not able to see the text, right? So I'll just read out the questions in there.
Oh, no, I can't. Hold on. Should I just,
If you want, I can read it out to you too.
okay, sure.
Okay. So Mariana asked you, how big are the coronets? You said big.
Big for a hummer would be 4 inches.
Okay. The
Sunbeam, or they're
Yeah.
like our Rufus, are like 3.5.
they look a little bit bigger, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Gail says fabulous birds. I don't know how many you showed us, but I feel like there must be 50 birds in there. I've
Yeah, but
lost count.
most of it were the pictures, because it's very hard to take photographs in the forest. You notice that most of them were things like going to feeders. So it was hummingbirds, breast finches, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I mean, there's an amazing amount of birds, but Well, unless you got amazing photography, the best is just right at the feeders. You know?
Mhm. Birds are very hard to capture.
Yeah, but then all the places we went to were amazing. That's all I can say. You know, they had the feeders, it was easy birding, really good infrastructure. Yeah.
Mm, okay. Elizabeth was asking you whether fire is a danger in the Colombian Andes or is it too wet?
Oh, fire isn't much of an issue in the Western Andes at all. It has the Choco region, especially lower down, 1,000 meters has got some of the highest rainfalls in South America. Extremely wet. Some places like below 1,000 meters, it rains basically all year.
Mm, okay.
That's the Western Andes. So that would be the west slope of the Western Andes.
So then on the east slope,
It's a bit
is it
drier.
drier?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do the ant pittas have such long legs and short tails?
Ant pittas are terrestrial birds that hop. So they have really strong legs. They don't really need, because they sit upright, they don't really need a long tail to balance because they sit so upright. And literally they just hop until they bounce around in the forest.
Mm,
So they have very strong, long legs to hop about because they spend all their time, or 90% of the time, on the forest floor, just hopping about, looking for worms.
okay. Someone asked you, what's your altitude while birding in the Andes? I heard quite high numbers.
We never got above 3,000 meters. The Paramo starts, I'm just guessing, maybe 28, maybe around 3,000 meters, 2,800 meters. But so none of it was uncomfortable. But all the birding was done between 1,200 meters and 2,800 meters, basically.
You said the moths trim their tails? So they grow in full, the tail feathers grow in full, and then they trim them with their beaks or something, or what?
Yeah, so they the weakened, I guess, veins or the plumes at the near the bottom of the tail, they just pick it off.
Hmm.
So they have very long tails, let's say almost body length. They'll leave the first half, 3/4, but the bottom 1/4, they take the feathers off it, but leave the tips. So they end up with rackets. So weird. It's the
Yeah.
only birds that do that, but 2 or 3 of them, well, not toddy mott, but broad-billed rufous, pluck their tail feathers like that.
Mm.
Somebody's asking when is the best month to visit?
The best month, it all depends on where you're going to go. It's such a huge country with, so in the Llanos, you want to go in the dry season, but the dry season and wet season will be different in different places in Colombia. November, December, yeah, November, December, January isn't a bad time to go. In general, just for a lot of Colombia. Any other questions?
So you were not there the whole time on the guided tour. Some of the time you were going on your own.
In Colombia, it was all guided by native birding, but
Okay.
it was a private tour. It was with Edwin Elcedo, I think is his name. Excellent, excellent guy. He runs the company.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
So when you do the guiding, like follow these groups to look at birds, do they arrange for your accommodation as well? Or like is it a whole package or is it
They raise
separate?
everything. In fact, I'll talk to both you and Harvey a bit later about a trip that I had organized for Nature Vancouver if you're interested in that sort of thing, to
Mhm.
Colombia.
Sure.
Yeah, that'll be amazing.
Any other questions?
Are there places that you missed that you wish you'd gone to?
Oh yeah. Like I say, it's so big. The Llanos of Colombia has got very similar llanos as Venezuela, which are like open grasslands. The Upper Magdalena Valley. There's a lot of different places. There's so many, but the places that I showed you, some of these like Rio Blanco, the Pia Reserve, and Tangaras, those are all some of the best birding spots in Colombia. You know, and you can see that in each of the places, the accommodation is basic and the food is basic, but they have everything there. You're right in the heart of the good forest. They have hummingbird feeders. They have, seed feeders, everything you want.
Mhm. Here's another question for you. Would you see the cock of the rock all year round?
Yep, you can. Yep,
Mm.
you can because there's usually at least one or two males, even if they're young males, that are near the dancing areas looking for females. So, although the Lex may not be really active all year round, usually in areas at a lek, you'll usually see one or two birds hanging around. Just like mannequin Lexes. They're almost like stable on the ground. They have little dancing areas they use year after year.
Um, Mariana asked, did you go into the forest or mostly stayed near the lodges?
We went into the forest, especially the Pia Reserve, where there was trails, but a lot of it was birding at the lodges. So at Rio Blanco, they had a nice road, paved road. You just walk up, or a gravel road. At the Pia Reserve, those were trails through the forest, many trails. Las Tangaras, it was to get to the mountain areas. I showed you some of the pictures there. It was a bit of a climb, the rough trails, but most of it was easy birding and lots of birds to see around the lodges. If you want to get some of the really hard stuff or good stuff to see, you might have to get into the forest, like to see certain like gnat eaters, that sort of thing. But if you just want birds and like it doesn't matter to you, then the lodge, the feeders, and that just excellent.
And this is a related question. Was a lot of walking or hiking required?
I would say no.
Just walking, basically.
No, because a lot of it, they cater to the visitors. So if you didn't want to, walk, that's okay.
Helen asked whether there are any critters you have to watch out for in the forest, like wildcats and snakes.
In the neotropics, anywhere I go, I always look on the ground, mainly for ants. Before I place my hands on a tree or a railing, I make sure there's no ants or caterpillars. And I tend to stay in the trails because there is fertile ants. There are a couple of poisonous snakes there. It's very rare to get bitten, but it happens to actually hundreds of people every year. Um, I would say the biggest concern are, well, for me, are ants, biting ants.
So what would
And
be the problem if you got bitten by an ant?
they're uncomfortable, they sting.
Okay.
And I've been in situations where I backed up into a tree in northern Peru and it was full of ants or all in my head. And another time in Panama, a friend of mine was standing on an anthill and his whole foot was just covered by millions of ants. They were biting him. In a couple of times in Panama and in South America, there were army ants, which you can easily avoid by walking away, but they have big mandibles. It's mostly just the insects that you're worried about. Chiggers has been a problem for me in some places, and for Linda. What am I saying? It's a skin mite, but you wear boots to that helps a lot. Boots and spray. Um, I would say the most of it is just the insect life you have to be really careful of because I have a few friends that where a caterpillar has fallen on them and has created a big welt, or another friend that put his hand on a caterpillar on a railing in Peru and it got swollen. So just mainly insects, but if you're careful, it's it's pretty good. It's good.
Mosquitoes? How about mosquitoes?
Really good. Didn't really notice any. Um, in the I've been in Amazonia where there's been tons and tons of mosquitoes, but it was really good. Very, very good. And in most highland areas, you don't ever, well, most places now on the planet, you don't have to worry about malaria, but yeah, it wasn't a factor at all, the bugs.
Any other questions? There are a few comments in the text as well, Tom. You can look at it afterwards.
Okay.
Saying thank you to you for sharing your beautiful photos. I
Okay,
just want to
excellent.
say that the birds is just like it seems like the creativity just went wild there. The beautiful colors, it just seems like somebody painted these birds.
Yeah.
Their names like fruit eater, flower eater, ant eater.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then the shimmering, what do you call it? Like when the color is like that?
Oh, iridescence.
Iridescence, thank you. Yeah, it's like it's so unfair. Why do they get all the beautiful, creative, beautiful looking birds? I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your travels with us so that we can travel vicariously through you. Oh, wait, Carolyn Penn says there could be yellow fever in the Amazon.
Oh, yeah. But well, before you go traveling anywhere, you always go to a travel doctor, and it's always wise to have all your vaccinations, yellow fever, and that sort of thing.
Mhm. Good advice. All right. I think we will call the meeting to a close.
Okay.
And I wanted to say thank you, Tom, again for sharing your beautiful photos and your expertise around birds and all your travel tips as well.
Thanks so much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.